Episode 8. So, Black was a supporter of you-know-who? Harry prompted apologetically.
Yeah, said Stan, still rubbing his chest. Yeah, that's right. Very close to you-know-who, they say. Anyway, where little Harry Potter got the better of you-know-who,
Harry nervously flattened his bangs down again.
all you-know-who supporters was tracked down, wasn't they? Most of them knew it was all over with you-know-who gone, and they came quiet, but not Sirius Black. I heard he thought he'd be second in command once you-know-who'd taken over. Anyway, they cornered Black in the middle of a street full of muggles, and Black took out his wand and he blasted half the street apart. And a wizard got it, and so did a dozen muggles were gotten away. Horrible, eh? And you know what Black did then?
Stan continued in a dramatic tone. What? Said Harry.
Laughed, said Stan. Just stood there and laughed. And when reinforcements from the Ministry of Magic got there, he went with them as quiet as anything, still laughing his head off. 'Cause he's mad. Ain't he mad?
If he weren't when he went to Azkaban, he will be now, said Ern in his slow voice. I'd blow myself up before I set foot in that place. Serves him right, mind you, after what he did.
They had a job covering it up, didn't they, Ern? Stan said. Whole street blown up and all them muggles dead. What was it they said had happened, Ern?
Gas explosion,
grunted Ernie. And now he's out, said Stan,
examining the newspaper picture of Black's gaunt face again.
Never been a breakout from Azkaban before, has there, Ern? Beats me how he did it. Frightening, eh? Mind, I don't fancy his chances against them Azkaban guards, Ern?
Ernie suddenly shivered.
Talk about something else, Stan, that's a good lad. Them Azkaban guards give me the collywobbles.
Stan put the paper away reluctantly, and Harry leaned against the window of the night bus, feeling worse than ever. He couldn't help imagining what Stan might be telling his passengers in a few nights' time.
Hear about that Harry Potter? Blew up his head. We had him here on the night bus, didn't we, Ern? He was trying to run for it.
He, Harry, had broken wizard law, just like Sirius Black. Was inflicting Aunt Marge bad enough to land him in Azkaban? Harry didn't know anything about the wizard prison, though everyone he'd ever heard speak of it did so in the same fearful tone. Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, had spent 2 months there only last year. Harry wouldn't soon forget the look of terror on Hagrid's face when he'd been told where he was going. And Hagrid was one of the bravest people Harry knew. The night bus rolled through the darkness, scattering bushes and wastebaskets, telephone booths and trees, and Harry lay restless and miserable on his feather bed. After a while, Stan remembered that Harry had paid for hot chocolate, but he poured it all over Harry's pillow when the bus moved abruptly from Anglesey to Aberdeen. One by one, wizards and witches in dressing gowns and slippers descended from the upper floors to leave the bus. They all looked very pleased to go. Finally, Harry was the only passenger left.
Right then, Neville, said Stan, clapping his hands. Whereabouts in London?
Diagon Alley, said Harry.
Righto, said Stan. Hold tight then. Bang!
They were thundering along Charing Cross Road. Harry sat up and watched buildings and benches squeezing themselves out of the night bus's way. The sky was getting a little lighter. He would lie low for a couple of hours, go to Gringotts the moment it opened, then set off. Where, he didn't know. Ern slammed on the brakes of the night bus, and it skidded to a halt in front of a small and shabby-looking pub, the Leaky Cauldron, behind which lay the magical entrance to Diagon Alley. "Thanks," said Harry to Ern. He jumped down the steps and helped Stan lower his trunk and Hedwig's cage onto the pavement. "Well," said Harry, "bye then." But Stan wasn't paying attention. Still standing in the doorway to the bus, he was goggling at the shadowy entrance to the leaky cauldron.
"There you are, Harry," said a voice.
Before Harry could turn, he felt a hand on his shoulder. At the same time, Stan shouted,
"Blimey, Ern! Come here! Come here!"
Harry looked up at the owner of the hand on his shoulder and felt a bucket full of ice cascade into his stomach. He had walked right into Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic himself. Stan leapt onto the pavement beside them.
"What you call Neville, mister?"
he said excitedly. Fudge, a portly little man in a long pinstriped cloak, looked cold and exhausted.
"Neville," he repeated, frowning. "This is Harry Potter."
"I knew it!" Stan shouted gleefully. Anne, guess who Neville is, Anne? He's Harry Potter. I can see his scar."
"Yes," said Fudge testily. "Well, I'm very glad the night bus picked Harry up, but he and I need to step inside the leaky cauldron now."
Fudge increased the pressure on Harry's shoulder, and Harry found himself being steered inside the pub. A stooping figure bearing a lantern appeared through the door behind the bar. It was Tom, the wizened, toothless landlord.
"You've got him, Minister," said Tom. "Will he be wanting anything? Beer? Brandy?" "Perhaps a pot of tea," said Fudge,
who still hadn't let go of Harry. There was a loud scraping and puffing from behind them, and Stan and Ern appeared, carrying Harry's trunk and Hedwig's cage, and looking around excitedly.
"How come you didn't tell us who you are, Neville?"
said Stan, beaming at Harry, while Ernie's owlish face peered interestedly over Stan's shoulder.
"And a private parlour, please, Tom," said Fudge pointedly.
"Bye," Harry said miserably to Stan and Ern as Tom beckoned Fudge toward the passage that led away from the bar.
"Bye, Neville,"
called Stan. Fudge marched Harry along the narrow passage after Tom's lantern and then into a small parlor. Tom clicked his fingers and a fire burst into life in the grate as he bowed himself out of the room.
"Sit down, Harry," said Fudge,
indicating a chair by the fire. Harry sat down, feeling goosebumps rising up his arms despite the glow of the fire. Fudge took off his pinstriped cloak and tossed it aside, then hitched up the trousers of his bottle-green suit and sat down opposite Harry.
"I am Cornelius Fudge, Harry, the Minister of Magic."
Harry already knew this, of course. He had seen Fudge once before, but as he had been wearing his father's invisibility cloak at the time, Fudge wasn't to know that. Tom, the innkeeper, reappeared, wearing an apron over his nightshirt and bearing a tray of tea and crumpets. He placed the tray on a table between Fudge and Harry and left the parlor, closing the door behind him.
"Well, Harry," said Fudge, pouring out tea, "you've had us all in a right flap, I don't mind telling you. Running away from your aunt and uncle's house like that. I'd started to think, but you're safe, and that's what matters."
Fudge buttered himself a crumpet and pushed the plate toward Harry.
"Eat, Harry. You look dead on your feet. Now then, you will be pleased to hear that we have dealt with the unfortunate blowing up of Miss Marjorie Dursley. 2 members of the Accidental Magic Reversal Department were dispatched to Privet Drive a few hours ago. Miss Dursley has been punctured and her memory has been modified. She has no recollection of the incident at all, so that's that, and no harm done."
Fudge smiled at Harry over the rim of his teacup, rather like an uncle surveying a favorite nephew. Harry, who could not believe his ears, opened his mouth to speak, couldn't think of anything to say, and closed it again.
"Ah, you're worrying about the reaction of your aunt and uncle," said Fudge. "Well, I won't deny they are extremely angry, Harry, but they are prepared to take you back next summer as long as you stay at Hogwarts for the Christmas and Easter holidays."
Harry unstuck his throat. "I always stay at Hogwarts for the Christmas and Easter holidays," he said, "and I don't ever want to go back to Privet Drive."
"Now, I'm sure you'll feel differently once you've calmed down," said Fudge in a worried tone. "They are your family, after all, and I'm sure you are fond of each other, very deep down."